Is this how your average pub game looks? Statistically speaking, if you lose in Apex Legends, there is a 68.99% chance that it is your settings fault and not yours.
I used to blame myself for being bad, but now I just blame my controller settings for all my insecurities.
Hi, I'm Ashton, here are my credentials, and today I'm going to be walking you through my Apex Legends controller settings, going over my personal peripherals of choice, and going into detail in some of the areas that other controller settings videos fail to mention. So trust me, you don't just want to click off when you see that sentence, because there's a lot of important info that you're going to miss. Gameplay settings. Getting things started, we have the gameplay tab, everyone's favorite tab. We have the interact prompt style, which I keep on compact to keep visual clutter to a minimum. The same can be said for button hints, which I also keep turned off. Crosshair damage feedback is a weird one for some people. Some people like to have the hit marker. Some people like the hit marker and shield icon, which I don't know why you would need that when the shield is shown by the color. But again, I personally just prefer to keep this off. It just keeps visual clutter down even more and helps me focus on my target. Damage numbers are on stacking. If you use anything other than this, I'm convinced you're a sociopath. But again, it's preference, so if you are a sociopath, feel free to use any of the other ones. I won't judge you. I did start the season with enemy health bar turned off and enemy highlight turned off. This was just a thing of hating the fact they added this, but now it feels like you can't actually do anything without these turned on because it just gives you such a massive advantage. So I would recommend like learning it if you were like me and you wanted to keep it off like the old ways. The old days of Apex are gone, baby. We're in the age of easy access now. Obviously, I keep the kill feed turned on, and I also have minimap rotation turned on because I find that when people ping, having the minimap rotate helps me easily locate where the pings actually are. It can take a little while to learn, but for me, it helped with a little bit of situational awareness. I personally prefer keeping auto sprint turned on because it just helps with making movement slightly easier. Jetpack control, I keep on hold. I think everyone agrees that toggle is just a bit odd. Incoming damage feedback I have set as 2D. This is just way more readable for me than 3D. And everyone knows by now that taking damage close as death box is essential to keep turned off if you want to get those easy armor swaps, because you don't want to be kicked out of a box by some sniping Larry across the map. Off-screen portraits is a new setting they added a couple of seasons ago. I prefer to keep this off. I don't need a giant picture of Conduit and Wraith on the side of my screen while I'm running around. Streamer mode is one that I personally keep off because I think the kill feed is more readable when it's people's names instead of the legend and a bunch of numbers. I do keep anonymous mode enabled even though I still get punched anyway, so thanks for that, guys. I didn't actually know I had usage sharing enabled, so let's disable that real quick. And if you're afraid of solo queuing ranked and don't like being called every slur known to mankind, then you can always put the communication filter on nobody so that you don't have to deal with everyone else's anger issues. Something I know a lot of you put a lot of time and care into is the reticle. I personally go for this minty green color. I don't think it really matters too much, but this color stands out enough for me to recognize it amongst pretty much every background in the game. Although if you don't like green, I recommend pink as an alternative. It's a really good option. And then we have maybe the most pointless setting in the entire game, the laser sight color. I don't know why you would ever need to change this because who is actually aiming with the laser sight? I don't think anyone has ever looked at this and thought, I need this. I genuinely think there is absolutely no benefit to changing the color of this, so I just keep it on default. Colorblind settings are another one of those ones that is totally preference-based, but some of you may not know that on certain colorblind settings, the threat vision color goes from being red to blue, which I know a lot of people really like. I don't know why this isn't something we can customize instead of the laser sight, but until we get that option, you can only do that by changing the colorblind mode, so that might be something worth looking into. Video settings. Up next, we have the video tab, and before we go into this, it's worth mentioning that I personally use an Alienware 27-inch 2K 280Hz monitor. For those of you wondering if the upgrade from 144 to 240 plus Hz is worth it, in my opinion, yes, but it's also not a massive difference. I think for most players, 144Hz is going to be fine. As you can see, I play on full screen, 16:9 native, 2560 by 1440. That's just my preference. I'm not really into stretch res or anything like that. I don't think it makes a massive difference on your gameplay either. And then I just have the bog standard 110 FOV, disabled FOV ability scaling because I don't need that if I'm on max FOV anyway. And a sneaky little setting that is for some reason in video and not in gameplay is sprint view shake. Make sure this is turned to minimal. I don't know why this likes to reset sometimes to normal, so make sure it's on minimal. As for the rest of the settings, I pretty much have everything on disabled or as low as it possibly can go. Even VSync and NVIDIA Reflex are turned off. I found this made my game feel a lot slower. I keep my texture streaming budget at 8 GB and my model detail at high, but everything else is low or disabled. Audio settings. Oh yeah, this is an important tab, right? Super important. Up until recently, I pretty much always used the Razer Black Shark V2 Pros as my headset of choice. However, I recently moved away to using some IEM in-ear earbuds instead. It's just way more comfortable and the sound is just as good. I've been using the EM6L Phoenixes, and yeah, pretty much all the settings in this tab are as you would expect. I keep my music volume and lobby music volume at 0 so that I can listen to those banging tunes mid-game, because I'm not going to hear anything else anyway. But the most vital and important setting that you make sure you must have enabled is emote preview sound. Controller settings. Okay, so this is probably what you came here to see, and I have a lot to say about the controller settings in Apex Legends. Up first, we have my button layout, which may look a bit weird, and I can explain. You may have noticed I have crouch set to down on the D-pad and interact set to R1. I am personally not a claw player, and the controller I'm playing on now has 2 back buttons. I play with crouch and jump both on my back buttons, so I have no need for crouch to be on one of my face buttons. I also put interact on R1 because this is one of the most important buttons in the game, and having quick and easy access to it with your index finger is going to make looting and reloading mid-fight a lot easier. I also moved healing over to right on the D-pad. This is because I can reach it without taking my thumb off the left stick. And I also put sprint/toggle zoom on right stick because I have a bad habit of putting too much pressure on my right stick while I'm shooting, and having sprint on there means that unless I'm using a 2-4 or a 1-2, nothing's gonna happen if I accidentally activate my right stick click. I know a lot of people prefer to have crouch on their right stick, but if I'm putting too much pressure on my thumb whilst I'm shooting with the right stick, it would mean I would accidentally crouch and it could mess up my aim. Moving back on over, we have stick layout, and of course, I'm playing on Southport. I obviously leave it on default. When it comes to the crouch button, I personally prefer toggle. I know a lot of people prefer hold, but for me, when I do actually go to crouch spam, which is a rare occasion, I've always preferred toggle. And the other super important setting in this section is trigger dead zones, which must always be turned to none, because otherwise it's going to take extra time for you between pressing shoot and actually shooting. Always keep these turned off. Okay, so now we're at the part that you've definitely been waiting for. My sensitivity. I use 4 mixed. Okay, it's 4-3 in-game, but it's not your regular 4-3. But before I go into how it's different from regular 4-3, I'll mention that I have linear response curve with no look dead zone, I have small movement dead zone, inverted look turned off, and vibration turned off. But shout out to all my vibrators out there, you are doing a good job of keeping a lot of people happy. And just know that there's nothing wrong with being a part of the hashtag vibration gang. But what exactly makes my 4-3 linear different to everyone else's 4-3 linear? Well, first up, in the actual in-game Apex settings, we have per optic settings, which I have set to 3, 3, 3, and then 4 all the way down, which I know, it's pretty groundbreaking stuff. But a lot of you will also know that in the advanced look controls, you can have a more in-depth per optic system as well. I also have these set up in my ALCs so that even when ALCs are turned off, these advanced look controls will also bleed over into my regular settings. A lot of people don't know that the per optic settings in the regular settings and the ALC per optics both combine. So for example, if I edit my ALC per optic for my 1x zoom, it's going to be 1.0 times 3, which is 3. However, this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to your sense feeling different to the sense of your favorite content creators. There are literally so many variables that can go into making your sense feel different. Things like stick tension, inbuilt dead zones, controller brands, stick sizes, Hall effect sticks, overclocking. Yeah, there's a lot that can make a controller feel very, very different. The one thing I can tell you is that they all have a very different feel in game. So just beware when you're copying your favorite streamer's sense that their sense is going to feel different to them than it is to you, unless you have literally the exact same controller. This is why I'm the biggest advocate for finding your own personal sense preference, because copying your favorite streamers is never going to be exactly one-to-one with what they're playing. Although if you do want to try my sense, it's a pretty bog standard sense that is good for almost every controller I've used. It's nothing special, honestly. And for those wondering, I currently play on a DualSense Edge. I always try and stick to PS5 controllers, and a few of the good brands I've run into are Battle Beaver, Get a Grip Gaming, Void Gaming. There's literally so many you can pick from. But now it's time to go into ALCs. By this point, we've all probably played with ALCs, but some of you still won't know what some of these settings actually do, so I'm here to clear up the confusion. Dead zone is going to be the setting which allows you to make a point in the center of your thumbstick in which any input is not registered. This is typically used to stop people from getting stick drift. Outer threshold is a setting that confuses a lot of people. The way I like to visualize this is if you're imagining the circle on your joystick is getting smaller. The more outer threshold you add, the the smaller your joystick would be. As we all know, with response curve, 0 is going to be linear, 10 is going to be classic, and anything else is going to be wrong. Your speed is going to be how quickly you turn left or right, and pitch speed is going to be up or down. The turning extra pitch and yaw are for when your input is at maximum, how much faster you will turn left or right. Having your ramp up time set to 0 means that you're instantly going to turn faster when you look left or right, but having it set to maximum means there's going to be a slow and steady increase in your turning speed. I hope this has given you a little bit of insight into my sense and why you should pick your own sense instead of copying other people's. If you enjoyed, then consider subscribing and click the video on screen for more questionable content.